Welcome to the Pucks with Haggs podcast, a proud member of the CLNS Media Network. Make sure to hit that subscribe button to the Bruins Rinkside YouTube channel and turn on notifications for when a new video drops to the channel. This show is brought to you by PrizePicks, the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Download the PrizePicks app today and use the code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. Welcome in, everybody. This is the 199th episode of the Pucks with Haggs podcast. I am your host, Joe Haggerty. You can find my work at joehaggerty.substack.com. Subscribe and get yourself a premium membership. Get all of my Bruins and NHL writing sent straight directly to your inbox. I also write columns 3 times a week for the Boston Sports Journal. So get a subscription to bostonsportsjournal.com. Check out all the great work that's being done over there. With me today is longtime friend and colleague, Mick Colageo. Mick, please tell everybody where they can find your work, my friend.
Like Rink Rap to X and Facebook, and during the season, I mostly do game coverage, but I've got a recent missive on Stanley Cup championships and how they're won, and also will be obviously covering what goes on here as we approach the draft in July 1 with the Boston Bruins, and I'll be writing the Hockey News Yearbook Bruins section.
Nice use of the word missive, Mick. We don't hear that word enough, and I'm going to try to use that in Words with Friends when I play against my mom and my nephew, because that is a fantastic word for Scrabble or Words with Friends. For those of you listening to this episode of the Pucks with Haggs podcast, we ask that you subscribe to the podcast, like, and leave a review. And for those watching the show on CLNS and enjoying all this hockey talk, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to the Bruins Rinkside YouTube channel, where you can find our show and a lot of other great Bruins content from fellow Bruins talkers like Connor Ryan and Evan Marinofsky. There's also the CLNS Media Network and Celtics All Access on CLNS, the NBA History Channel, Patriots Press Pass, and, of course, Bruins Rinkside YouTube channels as well. Also, please make sure to turn on your notifications so you know the instant a new Pucks with Haggs podcast video drops on the interwebs. All right, Mick, might as well get into the first things first here. Stanley Cup champions, the Florida Panthers, won 4-2, very decisive 5-1 victory. Edmonton really was never in that game at any point. It looked like a lot of other playoff series that I feel like we've seen, where Florida just wears you down until you're like an empty husk at the end and you don't have anything left. They pound you and wear you down with their depth and their withering forecheck and their physicality and the way they just keep coming at you wave after wave. And they do that over the course of a long playoff series. And by the end of the series, you don't have enough left to fight them, to resist, to get the puck up the ice and really have any sustained pressure against them. And we've seen them do this against great teams. We've seen them do this against great players. We saw, I think, Connor McDavid really was effective at times earlier in the series, but I didn't really even notice him that much, to be honest with you, in that Game 6. Same with Leon Draisaitl. It felt like they really just pounded the Oilers into submission. And there was also some goaltending issues with the Oilers as well through the course of that series that I'm sure they're going to have to address. But just a time to, I think, appreciate the Florida Panthers winning back-to-back cups, first team to do it since Pittsburgh, getting to the Stanley Cup Finals 3 years in a row, and really, turning themselves into a team that, with the cap going up and them likely being able to retain a lot of the pieces that they want to retain, this could be another couple of years of a dynastic type run for this team, the way that they play, the way they're coached, and the way they're put together. And I feel like we're watching one of those great teams in the midst of their run that we're going to talk about in NHL history here.
Add to that, but I will say this. The post-dynastic expansion era, the NHL's expansion era commonly begins in 1967 when the league doubles its size. And from that point forward, there's incremental expansion and the absorption of the WHA survivors, et cetera. And then a whole wave of Gary Bettman era expansion and migration. The regular season during the Gary Bettman wave of regular season expansion and migration to the South and West, took the NHL from 21 to 32 teams ultimately. But in that decade of the 90s, when they went from 21 to 30, the NHL transformed into a league that finally had what they always tried to get and that's the relevance in the regular season. They wanted to somehow bottle the playoff stress and the meaningfulness of the games into the regular season because they knew how special their playoff product is. They can't bottle playoff emotion, but you ride the elevators, Joe, and you've seen it. It's
Yep.
dead silence. You can cut it with the tension with a knife, and every game means everything throughout the 82. That wasn't the case in the 80s. The last time that any team played 3 full, complete regular seasons ending with the Stanley Cup Final. And that was the young Lion Gretzky Oilers
Yep.
of 84-85. That's the last time a team could do this. Tampa Bay did technically make 3 straight Stanley Cup Finals, but we know the mitigating circumstances that make it not a comparable feat from a physical wear and tear standpoint.
Yep.
The way this team plays accentuates that. It's time to talk about the Florida Panthers alongside the New Jersey Devils and the Detroit Red Wings as the very best of the post-dynastic NHL. That is what we're seeing here.
You know what I loved too, Mick?
And probably honorable mention to the Chicago Blackhawks for winning the Stanley Cup 3 times over that 6-year period earlier in the Cap era.
Yeah, they had a great run. No question about it. What I loved was the way they handled last night and the way they handled winning, right? And this entire Stanley Cup final run, Vitek Vanacek, a backup goalie, got one of those game pucks during this series when he didn't play a game. The way they handed the cup after the game last night, where Nate Schmidt was the first guy to get it because he had never won a cup before, and all of the first guys to get the cup and get their lap around the rink, and they didn't do the mini lap like around like a half.
I love
like
that.
part of the
I'm
sheet.
so nice to see that come back to a full lap.
Yeah, they took a whole lap around the entire arena. Every single player got to like take their lap and enjoy it. But they started with all the guys that had never won before. And the guys that were healthy scratches, and guys that were black aces, and guys that didn't play in the series, and all of those guys got their moment with the cup before they got it to Sergei Bobrovsky, and then they got it to all the other members of the team, who like have won before, were big contributors, all that stuff. But they did all of that stuff in the exact right way to show what team is all about. And I think that it's too bad that it's so late that a lot of like young hockey players and kids probably weren't even up to see that. I hope they were. I hope mom and dad let them stay up to watch that. But I hope that they saw and their parents let them know and then sort of told them what was going on there. So all of those kids can understand what a team is all about and what that you should be doing to be a good teammate and what should be rewarded and represented and talked about. And like they do it the right way. And it's part of the reason that they win is that that's their approach, and it's great to see.
On ice TV cameras changed the way the skate is done because of the wires. I remember I was in Madison Square Garden when Messier skated the Stanley Cup in 1994, and the wires were all over, the cords were all over the ice, and I'm thinking somebody's going to step on one of these things.
Yep.
It was just an incredible atmosphere, complete circus of emotion for those long-suffering Ranger fans. And so, but they got through it. Everybody lived, as far as I know. And but it's so nice that in a post-wire era, that now they're finally the light bulb, the goal light went on over their head. Hey, we can start bringing the cup around the ice again without worrying about all this stuff and having to confine it to this little 20-foot patch. I hated that.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you go up and down. It's like stops and starts with the Stanley Cup. This was much more organic and fun to watch. I don't care if you hate the Florida Panthers, and some teams do. They're a good hate team. I get it. But because I lived through the Flyers in the mid-'70s and the Devils when they came in 95. They're easy to hate, but you respect them in time. You learn to appreciate them, and then you try to emulate them. And that's what we're going to see here is an NHL is going to try to emulate the Florida Panthers. Ultimately, the next team that wins usually does it differently than what they're doing, what their formula is. But it's a sustainable formula in as much as they can stay healthy, and that's what blows me away about what they've already done here. Yeah, that's what blows me away.
Well, because the way they play, right? I think it's going to get more and more difficult for everybody to stay healthy, just because it's such a physical, intense frenetic way that they play, where they just don't back down and they keep coming at you and they keep pounding you. And like that takes its toll physically after a while. And you even heard Tkachuk talking last night about like injuries he was playing through, that it sounds like he's going to need surgery. And like he didn't even know if he's going to be able to play in the final, but he managed to play and be very effective. And you can hate the Florida Panthers, right? Like I saw a lot of stuff on social media, and it seems like it's from like casual, like hockey fans or casual Bruins fans, where they're talking about Bruins fans should be angry or pissed that Brad Marchand won the cup, or be angry at the Bruins, or like, is this the worst Bruins
I
moment or whatever
I'm
it is?
so tired of that crap.
Like, well, I just think it's stupid. You know what I mean? Like, let's all be adults here. Let's not be children and try to say, oh, the Panthers, we hate them, they're our enemy. Brad Marchand shouldn't be playing there. Blah blah blah. Like the bottom line is like the way the Florida Panthers play, whether you hate them, whether they're a rival team or not, you have to respect and admire the way they play. They do things the right way. They play the right way in the playoffs. They play exactly how every team would like to play if they had the ideal personnel and they were able to play that way. Marcus Sturm even mentioned that a couple times in his introductory press conference, how he loves the way the Panthers play, and he lives in Florida and sees them play a lot, but he just doesn't. You have to have the horses and the personnel to be able to play that way. Otherwise, you have to play a different style
And the buy-in.
to
Yeah.
be and the buy-in for sure. To be effective, you have to have all of that stuff and the depth really too. But like the bottom line is, if you're a Bruins fan, you should be happy for Brad Marchand. Like you should be happy and you should have been filled with joy to see him lift that cup and skate around the arena and celebrate as a champion again. Because it's obvious the Bruins are going in a different direction with the team right now, and it's going to be a retooling, and it's going to take a couple of years. It's obvious Brad Marchand, the competitor that he is, the player that he is, that was going to be a tough sell for him. It was going to be difficult to keep him around and keep him happy, knowing that they're going to have to sink to the bottom before they rise up again in a couple, over the course of a few years, and find a new core group that's going to be competitive, be a playoff team, and build to a cup contender. That's going to take time. And for a 37-year-old that's a competitor that's won before and wants to win again, that's not a great environment for them to be in. So I just don't think it was going to work out here with him because of all that stuff. And I think this past season was exhibit A of that. So it's almost like a win-win-win. The Bruins got a first round pick in 2026, I believe it is, or 27 for him. That's, a couple years down the line. Maybe Florida, like things will have slowed down a little bit there, and maybe it'll be a better first round pick, but likely an end of the round first pick, a 30th, 32nd pick. They get a first round pick for him. They don't have to like sign him to a contract where they're not sure if they did the right thing. They sent him exactly where he wanted to go. He goes and wins the cup and rejuvenates himself, and gets exactly what he deserves after being such a great player and a leader and everything for the Bruins. Like this is it, Bork went to Colorado and won his first cup, right? And everybody was happy for him because it was his first cup. This is a little different because it's his second cup. But there's some similarities between the two and the way things worked out and the situation that player was in Boston before they were moved out, that I think you should be just as happy for Brad Marchand to watch him last night and watch what he had done throughout the Stanley Cup playoffs and the final, and probably was the runner-up for the Conn Smythe to Sam Bennett, and to see him win. Like you, Mick, as sports writers, we don't root for teams ever. And it's just ingrained in us the way we do what we do, that you don't root for teams, but you do root for individuals, and you root for a guy like Brad Marchand because he's a good guy and he deserved all of that. And he's worked really hard, and he was a great Bruin. He deserved every moment of that glory last night with that team. And I think it's just something that Bruins fans should be happy for him about, and not pissed or jealous or angry that he was doing it in a Panthers uniform and feeling like, sad or emotional about it. Like that's little kid stuff. This is, he's an adult. He's out there competing. Like, be happy for him. He's a human being that you should be happy for because you cheered for him for so long.
I mean, I'm happy for him. I mean, part of this is knowing him,
Yeah.
and we're in a privileged position here as writers covering the team to
Yep.
actually know these guys.
Yes.
I mean, and it's rare for fans to be that close to a player, but seeing Marchand's family
Yes.
and having his kids around now,
who were really
And
not with him throughout most of this playoff run in his time in Florida because they were going to school in Boston and they were up in Boston. He was basically away from
good
his
point.
family from the trade deadline on for months at a time. And I think that's part of the reason he was so emotional last night when he was talking after the game, is because he was super happy to win, but he was also super happy that his family was finally there after he'd been doing it without them for like months at a time since he got traded down there.
Yeah. I mean, however right you may be about where the Bruins are headed here in the immediate, um, they're not selling it that way. They predicated their trade deadline sell off based on their belief that they can turn things around and be back in the playoffs next season,
Well, yeah, Mick. What
and be
I'm
a better
saying
team.
is it's going to take a couple years before they're going to be a cup contender. I'm not saying it's going to be terrible again next year. I think they do have a realistic belief that they want to be in a playoff contender next year, but I don't think they're under any illusions that they think they're going to be competing for a cup next year. I think
No,
they're
if we're talking about cup contention, I think that's a minimum 3 years away.
yeah,
And that's Brad Marchand's career ending.
right.
So in that regard, it's serendipity here for him to, at the more appreciative end of his career, you can have your head screwed on right and appreciate your opportunity to win at a young age. Um, and then uh, and now here he is with children who are old enough to see it and
Yep.
and to be part of it. And that's awesome for him. And I feel like he's very deserving the way he's laid down his body for the Boston Bruins, very similarly to the way the great players of the past, whether it be Wayne Cashman or Terry O'Reilly or any of these, I mean, the greatest of all time, Bobby Orr. You have you have players who just give up their body for their team, and they play through anything in order to win because they believe in it. And Marchand did that for the Boston Bruins. It's really hard from a Boston standpoint to begrudge him this opportunity to win late in his career with his family to witness it.
Yep.
And I mean, hearing him speak on the ice about how much he loves those guys and how much they, and this and that, it was kind of like it was a little weirdness there because I've heard him say it for so many years in Boston that to suddenly be able to achieve that in such a short time in Florida. But other guys on that team said similar things that they felt they were made to feel like they'd been around a long time, even if they hadn't been around very long. And that goes to Sasha Barkov
Yep.
and the way they do it and how they believe the way Sergei Bobrovsky treats his teammates. And a guy blocks a shot and gets injured doing it and has to hobble off the ice. That guy gets like a bottle of wine that I'll never see in my life. I
Yep.
mean, this guy. I mean, they just go to great lengths to bring it out of one another. The culture there is fantastic. I'm sure that Marchand appreciates everything about the culture he had in Boston, and he's seeing it from another prism over in Florida and seeing that other teams can do it and do it even better. So that's what he's experiencing right now,
Yeah.
and good for him.
And I think, it had probably been a couple of years, at least a year, since he'd really felt that way about being on a team, that had a legit chance at winning and that he was amongst that group. So I think he appreciated it more too after going what he had gone through in the first half of this year, being in a situation like that, that felt familiar to him, from when teams are on the cusp of winning, know they can win, have a legit chance to win the cup, like and play that way, like all that stuff. I think it brought the best out of him, but it certainly brought him back to that mindset where I think he was in a different mindset the first half of the year. And there was a couple of times this year with the Bruins, even early on in the year, the way he was talking, you could kind of tell this was not going to be their season, and he got it. Like he understood that they were going through some stuff and this
Yeah.
was not going to be a great year for the Bruins. And he knew that very early on. Like he recognized that. You could just tell with talking to him and the way he said things that he understood that, as a leader and as somebody that knew when a team had a legit chance to win or a team does not. Um,
Mm.
so like, being put in that situation, I think, he had true gratefulness and joyfulness and respect for that situation and reverence for it, because he understood that it's fleeting and that he was not in that situation in the first part of this year. It's going to be interesting, though, moving forward for that team. Like, Marchand's a free agent. Sam Bennett's a free agent. They're facing some big-time decisions. Sam Bennett wins the Conn Smythe, leads all players in goals scored during the playoffs. And yes, he's like a player, a good player during the regular season, not a superstar, but he's a superstar in the playoffs, and he does it year
And
in and year out.
that's probably the best thing possible for whoever gets him, because if he played the way he does in the playoffs the whole season, he wouldn't be
Right,
making it to the playoffs.
right.
His season would be shut down.
Do you think?
Oh, no human can play the way he plays 82 plus 2 months.
No, 100%. And he's a decent sized player, but he's not like a huge player either. Like, playing that way and
No,
that recklessly, like, he would not be able to do that at the size that he is. But um, do you think it's realistic that they're going to be able to keep this nucleus core group together? Because I believe Marchand's going to take less to stay in Florida now, after having won and found a home there and found somewhere he's comfortable. I think he's the kind of guy, if it's a good situation, especially if they have a chance to win cups every year and go deep in the playoffs, he's probably going to take a little less to stay in a situation like that. And it's East Coast, so it's not too far away. If his family stays in Boston, he's, not too far away, or they could move to Florida. But it shouldn't be a tough sell for anybody to want to stay in Florida if the team is good too, either, and live in Fort Lauderdale year round. That's not exactly that's pretty good living for a couple of years during the hockey season.
Yeah, I know. Could you imagine him having it? That'd be the first winter of his life.
Yeah,
There was a warm weather winter, except
totally.
for road trips.
Yep.
Yeah. I think Ekblad is going to be the real tough decision for them. I
Yeah.
think if Marchand's willing to cut back on his request, then I'm sure they'd love to keep him aboard, keep him around for another couple, 2, 3.
Yep.
But the fact that he found the fountain of youth, if he gets to July 1, then I don't see them keeping him, because then there's going to be offers that some teams that need something
Yeah.
are going to say, "I'll take some of that,"
Yeah.
and
Yep.
because he really did. I mean, we saw him skate better this past season in the Boston uniform
Yep.
than he had more closer to his double labrum surgery of a few years ago.
Yep.
And even though this season started out slow for the team and slow for him because of his other minor off-season surgeries, he had 3 of them.
Yep.
But for him it seemed like there was a point in the midseason where he was moving better, and then later in the season something was bothering him, and it kind of went downhill again for him. So for him to find the fountain of youth and look like old Marchand, I hadn't seen him play like that since the 2021 series against the Caps and then the Islanders, where he stole that game in New York, where he scored that overtime goal, rushing down the left wing and
Yep.
firing a bad angle roofer, just a vintage Marchand goal. And then you see him do it here in this final here. It's just so inspiring and fun to watch him reach back. And can he, if a team overpays, then they might be expecting they're going to get that for 6 months. They're not.
Yep.
It's not any more than Sam Bennett's going to play like that for 6 months. But you might get playoff Marchand in the playoffs. So if I'm a team like Dallas Stars and saying, how the hell did this fall apart on us? What did we do wrong here? And then I'm probably going to pony up for that guy.
Yep.
So Ekblad is the one that I think they're going to have a hard time keeping, because I don't really know how they feel about their decor and if they feel like it needs some identity redefinition. And that will probably be told to us in what they do with Ekblad. But
More
Bennett
on
they got
this.
to keep.
More
Bennett
on
they
this.
have to keep.
Yeah, more on this after the break. Let's give a little space to PrizePicks, the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America and the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Join over 10 million users and get started today. Instead of battling thousands of other players that could be pros or sharks, you simply pick more or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you watch the winnings roll right in. It is fun, and it is super simple. PrizePicks is the best place to win cash while watching sports. Join over 10 million users and sign up today. On PrizePicks, you can mix and match players from different sports, combine your favorite hockey players with players from baseball, basketball, esports, and more. You can't really do hockey players anymore because the Stanley Cup Final is over, but all the other sports, it does apply. You can now win up to 2,000 times your money on PrizePicks. PrizePicks now offers Venmo, MasterCard, and Apple Pay for quick and easy deposits into your account this sports season. Download the PrizePicks app today and use the code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. And for those of you listening to this episode of the Pucks with Haggs podcast, we ask that you subscribe to the podcast, like and leave a review. And for those watching the show on CLNS and enjoying all this hockey talk, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to the Bruins Rinkside YouTube channel, where you can find our show and a lot of other great Bruins content with fellow Bruins talkers like Connor Ryan and Evan Marinofsky. There's also the CLNS Media Network and Celtics All Access on CLNS, NBA History Channel, Patriots Press Pass, and Bruins Rinkside YouTube channels as well. Also, please make sure to turn on your notifications so you know the instant a new Pucks with Haggs podcast video drops on the interwebs. All right, here's a couple thoughts from readers here and hockey fans on Twitter, Mick. SH John 1000 says, this is why hockey is such a great sport. It's one of the few sports where elite effort can beat elite skill. Florida is the ultimate playoff team. They come at you in waves and they never stop, and that wears out their opponent, especially in a 7-game series. And this is from Legion 681. The Panthers destroy everything with their depth. The Oilers have the best player in the world and another one that is top 3 to 4, and it still isn't enough. They'll grind you to dust. If they can keep this team together, they'll be a dynasty, already very close to that. I think this is exactly right. I think it's about the depth they have, the effort and the will that they bring to the table and all of that stuff. On the other side of the coin, we've got the Edmonton Oilers, Mick, that have fallen short for a couple years now. Not as close this time as it was a year ago. I didn't feel like it was going to be as close this time either, and it turned out that way. And really, this time, McDavid was not great in the Stanley Cup Final. He had a couple of good games. Leon Draisaitl was the one that really stepped up and had some better games and helped them win at least a couple of games in the series. But, you know, you start to wonder if they're just going to keep running it back with this Edmonton Oilers group when they've fallen short against the Panthers a couple of times, even though they've got the two best players or two of the best players in the world in McDavid and Draisaitl. It's clearly not enough. Going to be interesting to see what they do. And you wonder, you know, how much criticism is going to come McDavid's way for not being as dominant as you would want the best player in the world to be in the most important time of the year, in the biggest series, trying to win his first Stanley Cup.
Would not give him an ounce of crap about that. I feel like Florida had the benefit of pro scouting him for 7 games last year, and they put in some strategy, knowing that they weren't going to have Zach Hyman and the threat. They take more chances that other guys aren't going to beat them, and they try to be more proactive on stepping up in the neutral zone against McDavid and taking more chances that other guys aren't going to get through. If I'm more disappointed, it's more, say, than Nugent Hopkins, because I feel like this is a golden opportunity for him to make a bigger stamp on a series and be a player that that gets overshadowed. Well, you know something? Where was he? Yeah. You know, I didn't see him take more rope there. I just saw him getting getting sucked into the eddy of post whistle shoving and punches in the face, and so to me it's like, come on, Nuge, you're this far down in your career. I wanted more from him in this thing if I was going to pull for Edmonton here. And Draisaitl I thought was really good. I thought McDavid was trying to be McDavid. I just thought that one player against a village as good as the Panthers village is a tough thing to crack. I saw Gilbert Perreault run up against the Philadelphia Flyers in '75. Very similar situation. You can be a great player, but a great team always beats a great player.
Yep.
And if I'm Edmonton, I think it's for them. They got to fix the goalie thing. That's absolutely number one.
Yep.
And I'd also say this. I, for years, have been saying the Oilers need Matthias Ekholm. The Bruins need Matthias Ekholm. The Oilers finally get Matthias Ekholm, and it changes their team, and they make it to the Stanley Cup Final in consecutive years. However, what the hell was he doing there playing puck on Reinhart on that first goal?
Yep.
He comes over there and he tries to get puck. Oh, Reinhardt should have been on his tail pad, picking
Yep.
himself up off the ice.
Yep.
That was an incredible mistake by a great defensive defenseman. But this is what the Florida Panthers can do to teams.
Yes.
They can get you out of your mindset. They can twist your brain, and as a group, this is what they do. By the way, off topic, slightly off topic here. My friend, I believe, assuming it's Dennis Votor in my texting chain, he is always on top of all the breaking news and just texted that the Oilers are going to lock up Trent Frederic on a long-term contract at a lower AAV.
Yeah, that has been out there. I've seen that one from a couple of different places, even before the end of the Stanley Cup Final, that they were very interested in keeping him, and it was going to be for a long-term deal, shorter money. And Trent Frederic told me earlier this year when we talked about it that the most important thing for him in free agency was having the peace of mind of having a longer term deal. He'd always gone like year to year or max 2 years with the Bruins, and he always had that kind of hanging over his head without that certainty and that security. And that's something he said he really, really wanted and valued, and was a big part of it. So it makes total sense that he would stick around on a long-term deal and probably take much less AAV than he might get elsewhere on a shorter term deal to stick around in a place where he liked it, and where he found a good situation for himself. But he's going to be a fourth line guy there. He's going to have to start playing like a fourth line guy, I think. Maybe third line once in a while, but he's going to have to continue to like figure out exactly what he is and make sure he's playing the way like his skill set and his job requires him to play, instead of like fancying himself like a top six guy or more of a skill guy. He needs to continue to make those hard plays and play to his size and strength, I feel like.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, it'd be interesting to see how he finally things shake out and what they look at for his role in their bottom six. Um, and when you're talking about the Panthers' depth, I couldn't help thinking how happy Thomas Nosek looked to be sharing the Stanley
Yeah.
Cup
Yep.
with his wife and his kid,
Yep.
and AJ
AJ
Greer,
Greer. Yep.
Jesper Boquist.
Yep.
I'm thinking like I didn't think that they could. Stenlin, I thought was such a great fourth line center for them that when he left and then Montreux leaves, I didn't give them and Ekman Larson leaves, I didn't give them a prayer this year. Not a prayer. If there was one thing I was sure of going into the season, is that the Florida Panthers would not be in that series last night, much less win it.
Yep.
So this is what great. This is why I am so adamant that this is now a team that has to be looked at alongside the New Jersey Devils of '95, 2000, and 2003, and the Detroit Red Wings of '97, '98, '02, if not '08 as well. So this is a team that has a core that has been able to do something really special here. I suppose we could talk about the Blackhawks and the Kings that sandwiched themselves inside the Blackhawks three championships. The Kings had two in there,
Yeah,
and
this is
they
different
battled
though.
each other to a Game 7 overtime in the conference final. So I suppose they won in on that conversation. But I'm really impressed with what I've seen from the Florida Panthers in this era, the way they play, and their ability to sustain it with an ever-changing cast that just assimilates to the board. They
Yeah.
pick up their shovels, they go to work, and they get it done. It's unbelievable.
No, this feels a little different than the Blackhawks and the Kings to me, watching what they've done the last 3 years and winning back to back. And, essentially things have changed since Matthew Tkachuk got there, really. I mean, he changed, I think, everything for that team, top to bottom. Him getting there turned them into what they are now, and they've just added to it. Bill Zito's done a great job.
I would put Bennett equal to that because I feel like so much of what Tkachuk does stands on the shoulders of Bennett's physicality.
Yeah. I
He
feel
has his
like
own
that.
brand of getting under skin and clutch goals.
No,
it's
he's
just
been a really good player. There's no doubt about it. But I really feel like there was a tipping point when Tkachuk got there where things have been different. But to your point about Edmonton and the goal, to your point about Edmonton and the goaltenders, they need to do something about it. Stuart Skinner, that play last night where he doesn't glove that puck, get a whistle, and he just lets it bounce off of him, and he turns into a rebound goal, and it's 3-0. Like he needs to make a better.
He had to lose that. He had to lose that puck because he flinched. He flinched when it hit him.
Yeah.
So he messed out of net. He must, even though it was flung by Verhaeghe from the perimeter, he must have lost it somehow because
But you
when
could
it hit
see,
him, you can kind of like,
you could see everybody thought he was going to catch it and get a whistle because everybody kind of stopped playing. Like everybody expected him to
he
freeze
had
the
all
puck
day.
there. It was a
Yeah.
total muffin floating towards him, and somehow
It wasn't
he
even a tumbling muffin.
no, not even. But to your point, like, and he said the same thing about Ekholm. The way the Panthers play forces you into physical and mental mistakes as the series goes on. They grind and wear you down where you start making those kind of mistakes and they pounce on them. And that's how they win. That's part of their plan over a 7-game series. That's part of any good hockey team's plan, is to wear you down to the point where that stuff starts to happen. I remember a play where Dennis Seidenberg, it was in the Stanley Cup Final against the Blackhawks. Do you remember this? Where it was a game-winning goal for the Blackhawks, where he lost his glove in the corner, and he went and go get his glove instead of going to the front of the net and continuing to play, and they end up like scoring a game-winning goal on that play. And I was like, what was he doing? Why did he go get his glove? Wait for the whistle. Like, you gotta get a whistle and finish out the play. But like, I think it was late. I think they'd been playing like it was maybe like an overtime game or something like that. So I'm sure fatigue.
Is that game 4 that Brent Seabrook won on the rush?
It might have been, but I remember thinking fatigue was definitely a part of what happened there. Is he was just an autopilot and like, oh, I got to go get my glove. Was not even thinking like awareness wise. I need to get to the front of the net and finish off this play and not let them score here. But all right, that's a different thought for a different day. One final thing before we go, Mick. Bruins development camp roster, a preliminary roster, I guess you would call it, announced yesterday for 4th of July week. That's when development camp is going to be, traditionally right after the NHL draft. I would assume most, if not all, of the drafted players will be at that development camp. Maybe there'll be a couple more invites, but guys like Dalton Bancroft, Zellers, who they traded for, was among the names there that were going to be on the preliminary list, and we're already there. Just anything that intrigued you, or anybody you're looking to watch and curious about of the names that you saw?
Well, Bancroft is at the top of my list.
Yeah,
because he's going to be 25 years old, and before we get to the next NHL playoffs.
Yeah, and he should be a dominant
he
figure. He should be a dominant figure in a development camp like that. There's no question
and
about
especially
it.
with the rest of this cast is extremely young.
Yes.
There's very amateur. I think there's one guy with Providence Bruins experience, and
Yeah.
it's Jackson Edward, and he played 31 games for them. So,
Right.
so Dalton Bancroft, when a lot of teams wanted Dalton Bancroft, NCAA free agent. He'll be 25 years old next winter. If you want that player, then you think he can play for you now. And I think this is and bringing him into development camp at such an age group misfit, to me, speaks very loudly as to. And Andre Gasso, by the way, is back in the development camp, which is interesting because I don't really know for sure that he's going back to BC, where I
Yeah.
assume he'd be captain of the team, or if he's going to turn pro and join the Bruins. I imagine the Bruins really would love for him to turn pro here. It's a
Yep.
great time for opportunity in Boston. So I think that seeing both of those guys together and being able to get a look at them and try to evaluate them against this group, I think that those are, especially in the case of Bancroft, who has turned pro, this is a huge, everything is huge for him this summer. Everything, because I think the Bruins want him to make the team and be a right winger behind David Pastrnak on a, hopefully a second line. But is he an NHL player? Can he keep up? What do we got there? I think they need to. I think that's what they want to know. Everybody else, I think they're pretty much taking their temperature and just hopefully checking in on them, hoping things are going well with them. I'm really looking forward to watching Elliot Gronwald
Yeah.
and Chris Pelosi from Quinnipiac.
Yep.
Those are two players that look to me like legit NHL prospects that are guys that really kind of excite me as potential NHLers a few years down the road here after they get at least a couple more years at Quinnipiac.
Yep. No, I like both of them at development camp last year. Gronwald was the one that stood out to me a lot as a defenseman, a big Vermont kid. Like, he was skilled too. Like, he was a good player. You noticed him right away. But it's, you go into it, and a lot of fans or people that are at Warrior watching these sessions will assume that everybody's on sort of equal footing here. And the thing is, and you're right, like, the players that are in their mid-20s, the players that have gone through all the years of college, the players that have some pro experience, they should and need to stand out at these development camps. They really need to be the most dominant players, the ones you notice the most, if they're going to acquit themselves well. Like when new guys come in, like let's say Dean Letourneau last year, when he came in for his first development camp after playing basically high school prep hockey in Canada, like you expected him to struggle and not to be at the level that a lot of those other guys were, even though he was a first round pick. And he did to a degree. Like he flashed a little bit, but he definitely had his moments where he was having a hard time. And that's how you knew he wasn't going to be this like superstar at BC going into last year, and that it was going to be a learning year for him. So those kind of players, you have to give a little bit more leash and understanding that they're not going to be dominating everything. But the guys that have been around for a while, and some of them are maybe like 6-7 years older than the other players and have man strength and man abilities, as opposed to the kids that are teenagers and just coming out and going to college and things like that. Like, you got to put all of that stuff into the blender when you're evaluating and when you're watching these prospects. But I'm interested
People
to see
are already
Zellers.
talking about Letourneau like he's a blown pick. I don't think so.
No, not yet.
I'm looking at him like this is a project.
Yeah.
They're looking at the very long haul with this guy. Games I watched with BC last year on TV, I felt like he had good instincts on the forecheck, good ideas. I thought he was smart. I thought he obviously can shoot the puck. He skates well, but he doesn't have man strength yet that you just alluded to.
Yeah.
And so smaller, thicker bodies won those 50-50s from him with great consistency. And so the fact that, that they were willing to put him on the ice in 1-goal games in the third period. So they know that that he plays a team concept game. So so I think I'm looking forward to seeing him too, but not with an eye on, boy, he better come around because that's a first round. I'm not thinking like that with him. Thinking like, this is going to be an incremental thing, and it might be glorious when it gets to the end, but it's a journey. It's a journey with him. He didn't think it would be that long, but we all kind of like looked at each other like, yeah, I don't think this is going to be 1 year, one and done at BC.
No, but I mean, that's, I think a lot of people expect a first-round pick to come in and dazzle you immediately, and you just knew that wasn't going to be the case with this kind of player, and that it was going to be a longer-term investment. I will say the one thing I noticed at BC more than anything else, I think you're right. Like, he generally knew where he was supposed to be, and he generally, like, I thought he moved well enough for a guy his size, but I also think he kind of like faded into the background a lot. There was a lot of like shifts where nothing was really going on, when he was out there.
No, yeah, that's right.
And I think that's kind of what you want to see that change. Like that needs to change over the next year or two, where he's consistently more of a factor every single shift.
More impactful shifts. Yeah.
And that's something you didn't see enough of last year, but understandable. Like he probably shouldn't have even been there. He was rushed in a year early into that situation where like he was supposed to go to the USHL instead. So like I get it, and I think you have to be patient with him because of all of that and because of all the backstory with him and sort of that knowledge going in. But yeah, I'm curious about that. I'm really curious about Zellers because like it seemed like he really had a great season this past year. And there was fanfare about him being included in that trade. I think it was the Charlie Coyle trade, right? He was a Colorado Avalanche prospect.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see how he's going to stack up with these other guys in development camp as well.
Yeah, he might be. I'm afraid he might be one of those guys who's going to look really good in development camp, but when he starts playing man hockey, I don't know. I don't get the sense that he's a well-rounded player.
Yeah. Hey, if you can do something really good sometimes, you don't need to be all that well. Or they can teach you how to be well-rounded, right, Mick? That's the sense I get from.
You can teach most of them.
Yeah,
but we got an elephant in the kitchen here, and he's
true.
Not in development camp.
All right, Mick, thank you very much for joining us. Let's thank PrizePicks, the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Download the PrizePicks app today and use the code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks run your game. We're also saying signing off and saying goodbye with the Pucks with Haggs podcast, a proud member of the CLNS Media Network. Make sure to hit subscribe to the Bruins Rinkside YouTube channel and turn on notifications for when a new video drops on the interwebs. Mick, thank you very much for joining us.
Always fun, Joe. Thanks for having me.
Everybody else out there, we'll see you at the rink.